Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. How well do you know your own customer data? Is it unified in a single place or in several places, connected with varied formats? Are you considering adding to your tech stack? And do you truly understand the problem that you're trying to solve? David Raab is the founder and CEO of the Customer Data Platform Institute, and he's a subject matter expert at marketing technology and analytics. And on this episode, we'll discuss what a CDP is, what it can do, how to pick one based on use cases, the value of unified data, and the needed strategies behind the addition of this tool. So let's tune in to the Godfather of CDP with the Don Corleone of Sharks on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. David, thank you so much for joining us on A Shark's Perspective today. Please tell us a little bit, if you would, about your background and your career thus far.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
You bet.
My career so far, started many years ago. I'm a direct marketer by trade. Started out in the magazine industry and the continuity industry. About 10 years or so into that career, I switched over to working independently. Started out as a consultant. I thought I was going to build predictive models, but then nobody had databases back when I started. So we had to think about building databases. This was a long time ago, so you needed mainframe computers to build databases back then, and I didn't have to have one of those in my garage at the time. So I sidled over into consulting to help people find other consultants or other companies to build databases for them, and I've been doing that forever since. About 2 years ago, I started the Customer Data Platform Institute. I actually named the term Customer Data Platform back in 2013, and the Institute is an outgrowth of being one of the leaders in at least recognizing the field. Again, as with mainframe computers, I don't do the work. And the CDP industry has taken off, and the CDP Institute has taken off right behind it.
Agreed. So, walk us through in short what a CDP is and what the basics of the functionality is that goes with that piece of equipment.
Okay, Customer Data Platform is defined by us as a packaged software that builds a persistent unified customer database that's accessible to other systems. So that's the official CDP Institute definition. What that kind of means in plainer English is it's packaged software. You can buy it, so it's not a custom job that your IT department builds for you. It's a unified persistent database, so unified in the sense that it brings together data from all your sources, and it organizes it around a customer view, so it builds customers' profiles. Persistent in the sense that the data is actually stored someplace outside all of those other systems, which is what lets you do things like trend analysis on it and track individuals over time, even though their address might change. And then accessible to other systems, of course, is self-explanatory, but there are a lot of other systems that might build a database that looks a lot like a CDP database, but only make it available for their own use. So like a modeling tool, predictive modeling tool, might build a database, but then just use it for its own predictions and not share that data with an analysis tool or with your CRM system or whatever. So the CDP is designed to do that sharing.
So when you look at the ridiculous tech stack chart that keeps growing infinitely, if I'm considering adding yet another piece of software or hardware, then why do I need a CDP?
Well, the CDP actually helps to keep that ridiculous text chart under control because it takes one of the functions that all those systems do, which is to build a customer database and pull it away and do it once instead of doing it 20 times if you have 20 different systems. So what that means is that your other systems can be much simpler. It also means it's much easier to change those other systems around because you don't have to worry about, am I going to lose the customer history that's stored in my email vendor if I switch to a new email vendor. So it makes it easier to add. It makes it easier to change. It lets you, of course, do all of your customer data work in one place so you can concentrate on getting it right once instead of having to divide your energy among 20 or 100, which is not an uncommon number of marketing systems to have, systems each of which is trying to do its own, and of course none of which will do it very well.
Well, a lot of people are going to inherit, they may already have some other pieces in place. When you look at, whether it's CDPs or DMPs or CRMs or data lakes and warehouses and all the other pieces that either are part of my growing stack or existing stack, why do you think the CDP is the best choice? And at a high level, what can I achieve with it in lieu of some of those other products that I may already have in place? Or do you always see it as just an add-on to another, like a lot of CRM lights that you sit on top of a data warehouse?
Well, there are lots of different kinds of CDPs, and
Sure.
some have functions that do personalization or analytics, and those might overlap with existing systems that you have or don't have. So if you already have a great analytics tool, a great attribution tool, for example, then you wouldn't want to buy a CDP that has attribution as a capability, or you might still buy that one if you like other things that it does, but you wouldn't buy it for that purpose. So you can buy a CDP that minimizes the degree of overlap with your existing tools if you want. Of course, many companies don't have a really good system for attribution or for personalization or for whatever. So in that case, buying the CDP that has that, in addition to the core CDP function of building the database, is a valuable thing to do. Again, very, very few companies have that core unified customer database that the CDP provides. That's pretty much unheard of. Maybe 10%, if you look at the survey numbers, will claim to have it.
So as a marketer within a company or a business owner, what does this do for me? It's the bright shiny object, the cool sexy product of the year. What does the CDP do for most businesses to help it grow? Is it more important for helping keep up with your competitors and improving upon that tech stack that grows? Is it something that's going to unlock creative more? Is it something that is going to increase my revenue, which is really paramount in today's ZBB world? I mean, ultimately, you always have to justify that spend to somebody, whether it's a boss, a board, investors, and whoever. Where do you sort of see where that CDP fills in for a justified spend?
Well, ultimately, of course, everything we hope would increase revenue, or we wouldn't do it,
Right.
or decrease cost. The specific use cases that you would see addressed with the CDP, there are actually several of them. The one is just getting all your customer data in one place so you can analyze it, so you can get a complete picture of your customer view, of your full customer history, your customer journey. That really is not possible because otherwise your data is usually locked up in silos.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing you can do with a CDP that you can't do without a CDP. Once you have the data assembled, then the next thing that you can do is then present all of your other systems with that complete data, which again was never available before, so they can do their own personalization, say, and be accurate and be consistent. The third thing that you can do that you couldn't do is begin to orchestrate across systems, not just present them each with its own correct copy of consistent data, but actually do some of the decisioning within the CDP as to how you're going to treat each customer and make sure that they get treated across all channels the same way, because you have one decision engine that's sitting on top of the CDP, part of the CDP. That makes that. And then ultimately, if the CDP itself is making actual decisions and personalization decisions, you can see the CDP doing that as well if you have a CDP that extends to that level of functionality. And then thirdly, or actually probably fifthly, you're going to save money, because a lot of companies have very inefficient processes today to try to assemble those unified views sort of on a case-by-case basis. So the data scientists or the data admin people spend a lot of time just messing around with files, trying to bring them all together and doing quality control. So the CDP makes that a standardized process so that data is available so that your data scientists and your analysts can spend their time on more productive things.
Yeah, companies that have inefficient processes is probably the understatement of the year, where a CDP would benefit. But and I'm very familiar with CDPs. But speak to this, if you will, because I heard you speak about this at a conference about unifying data and really the value there. I'm a big proponent and evangelist of unifying data within, a company or in any kind of advertising or marketing, but help explain how a CDP does that, and also maybe a little bit about the processes that go into how it actually does that.
Sure. So the mechanics of the CDP are very much a linear kind of sequence. You ingest data from different source systems. So one of the things you have to look for is a CDP that can take all the different kinds of data that you have to deal with. And nowadays we have lots and lots of data. Back to your big MarTech chart, that there are many, many different data sources, and it all comes in different formats. Once you ingest it, then you have to, of course, standardize it, do some quality control on it, make sure that the phone numbers are all in the right format, consistent format, the product numbers are all consistent, that kind of thing. Then, of course, the next big step after that is doing that unification piece. Find this email address is associated with this mobile device, is associated with this postal address, with this mobile app ID, with this account number for your existing customers, all that stuff. Put it all together, then again, you want to do some reformatting again to do some analysis, look at your trends, look at your aggregations, look at lifetime value, assess customer life stage, all the things you want to do now that, again, you have that first full, complete picture of the customer that you didn't have before. And then finally, you need to expose it to your other systems, which may involve some transformation because it might be sitting in a format that a particular system can't use, so it needs to translate it into a SAS data set or a flat file or a SQL database or whatever format a particular system needs to have it in. So the CDP runs through all those processes. Again, because it's packaged software, it has the core structure already in place to do that, so you're not creating it from scratch with some poor programmer trying to figure out what's going on. It's more a matter of configuring. Say, well, okay, at this step, this is what I need to do. From my list of options at this stage, this is the next thing I need to do from that list of options. So much quicker to get it built than if you were going to have to do it all from scratch.
Then talk a little bit about the evolution of the CDP. And I say that because of the bazillion different pieces of that modern tech stack. How did this one become such an important tool of the day so quickly?
Well, it's important actually to realize that it's not so much that the technology itself is new or different. There's really no such thing as CDP technology.
Right.
CDPs are really using today's modern, current technology. So a lot of it is the big data stuff, the dupes and APIs and different kinds of unstructured and semi-structured databases, or they're not even databases, actually, file systems, and some of the more modern interfaces, microservice architecture, all the cool things that we talk about. But there are other systems that use that as well. What's new about the CDP specifically, again, is that it's all pulled together in a package, so rather than somebody having to assemble that custom, you have someone else who's already done that custom assembly and given you a package to work with. So that's really what's new about it. Now, that being said, again, that modern technology is itself relatively new. We didn't have Hadoop or Mongo or Cassandra, 15 years ago. I don't, probably didn't have them 10 years ago. I forget how old they are. But, so now the reason it's all become so popular in the past 2 years, I like to think it's because of the CDP Institute.
There you go.
Chances are that's not really the case. If you look at the chart, it does actually go hockey stick right when we were founded, but we suspect the causation runs the other way. The reality is that the problem kind of reached a critical mass a couple of years, just recently. Just when you had so many systems, mobile comes in about 10 years ago, but the iPhone's about 10 years old now, right? You really had this huge switch to mobile in particular. Really is happening 2 and 3 years ago. So mobile apps are a whole new data source. Obviously, web has been important, but it's become much more important. So instead of 1 or 2 data sources, all of a sudden marketers were dealing with 5 and 10 and 20, and in some cases 100. And what was originally a problem that you could either manage or sort of successfully ignore when you only had a couple of primary channels becomes impossible to ignore when you have 5 or 10 primary channels, especially because customers are now expecting you to have all that merged together. They think everybody should be as good as Amazon at customer service. And, well, we're not all as good as Amazon, but the customers assume that if you're not, it's because you're somehow don't want to be, not because it's just really, really hard.
Well, if I know that a customer data platform is going to be my tech stack edition of choice, then what type of guidance do you give people when considering a CDP? It seems like every one of the products I've either used or evaluated over the years has been off by 1 or 2 features, and that can obviously affect your view of use cases. But what kind of guidance do you give the people you're consulting with on these type of purchases and decisions?
Well, our business at the Institute is to help people understand CDPs. We don't promote any particular CDP, and although we do some consulting in vendor selection, that's kind of not our primary mission. So that's how I made my living for many years, but at the moment it's not what I'm really doing too much. So all we do is we tell people, focus on your use cases.
Right.
Focus on what it is you want your CDP to do. Figure out given what you're trying to accomplish, what features you need, what features are implied by those use cases, and then go out and find CDPs that have those features. So what we do at the Institute, for example, is we publish a reasonably detailed list of 20, 27 odd key features that are available in all the CDPs that are part of the Institute, which is pretty much all of them, all the big ones. And we say, so for example, if you're doing B2B, well, you need to have account and contact level, a two-level database. That's just a core thing in B2B. And so we can tell you, we just probably, here's the CDPs that do that. Here are the CDPs that don't do that. So if you know you're going to have a B2B application, you can look at that kind of a list. And you can say, okay, these are the dozen or so that are at least worth thinking about. And I can just ignore all the other ones. So we try to provide some general guidance. And then we do really stress very, very strongly the need to be driven by your needs, not just to look at any list, including our list, and who has the most features, or who has the biggest ad budget, or who makes the best
Sure.
presentations at conferences, or all those kinds of things.
Yeah, great clarification. Well, and I'm not asking you to name names since you keep, agnostic to it, but from a functionality standpoint, what are the must-haves that you've generally seen needed in a CDP product where you've seen performance be great for those clients and agencies that they eventually serve?
Well, there are a couple of things that we like to see, okay? It's really helpful to have a lot of connectors to a lot of
Right.
different source systems and different output systems.
Good.
And again, you really only need the connectors to the systems that you're using, right? So, although it's nice if somebody tells you they have 200 connectors, that's great. But if it's not if it's not the 3 that you need or not among the 200, it's not so great. But in general, more connectors is a good thing. In general, the easier it is to ingest the data, not just beyond the connection level, but to do the data modeling and to figure out, again, because you're going to suck in everything. That's what the CDP does. It sucks in all the data and stores all the gruesome detail. But then to take it the next step and select out the fields or the attributes that are relevant to you, sometimes that can be harder or easier. And then it's just a core capability to make that data available. Some of them, again, depending on what you need, have very advanced AI or predictive modeling or machine learning capabilities. Again, if you need it, you want to make sure that that's really usable by human beings as opposed to, the handful of data scientists who actually are human beings too, but are often not terribly available to the marketing team. So, again, there are a lot of very specific functionalities that are driven by your use cases. Same for personalization. If you need it, then you got to find a system that does it, and some do it better than others. And if you don't need it, it simply makes no difference.
So I mentioned agencies earlier, and obviously this is more of customer data that typically lives within the the brand or the advertiser. But out of curiosity, what kind of adoption rate have you seen with a lot of the agencies who act on behalf of these brands they serve? What's their adoption rate with CDPs?
Well, that's a big growth market for the CDP vendors actually right now. There are lots of different kinds of agencies, but most of the agencies nowadays do have some technical competency, which they didn't used to.
Or they're out of business.
Wonderman and J. Walter Thompson were just merged, which if you're an old timer in the industry, those were two icons, and oil and water, direct marketing agents, over here like Wonderman, Lester Wonderman's old firm, and J. Walter Thompson, which has been around, I think, for 100 years, or maybe since the 1930s. Classic old line, Mad Men style agency. Those were two groups that never really got along with each other. But now marketers need both. The distinction between what used to be called direct marketing and mass marketing or general marketing simply is irrelevant because everybody's on the web and everybody has masses of individual level data from that web contact. So the agencies have to have the technology to do that. And again, the CDP is one of the core technologies that makes that possible in a cost-effective way. And cost-effectiveness and speed are especially important in agencies.
Good point. So, I saw you speak at a MarTech conference recently, and one of the other entrepreneurs of a CDP company spoke later in the day, and he told me later that he was nervous following you because, as he phrased it, he was following, the Godfather of the CDP world. What kind of guidance do you give? And I'm sure you mentor a lot of these guys that approach you with looking for help with your storied career, but what kind of a guidance do you give these techpreneurs in the space and how to best grow, their technology business and advance CDPs in the marketplace?
Well, what we try to do with someone who comes to us for guidance is tell them, first of all, free advice is worth what you paid for it. But beyond that, we try to tell them, make sure that you're solving a problem that's not already been solved. Okay, so many of the new products, many of the new CDP products that we see are targeted at a particular industry that's been underserved. And again, getting back to my point about connectors to particular systems. So if you're going to serve retail and you have connections to point-of-sale systems, or the automotive industry and you have connections to dealer systems. There are a lot of niches out there where having that vertical specialization is really important. So that's a really good thing to have. Of course, there's also other kinds of specialization, like geographic specialization, or specializing in, say, small business or mid-sized business. Real small businesses are never going to use a CDP. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the complexity to even take advantage of it. So we tell them, do that. Try to find a unique message. It's a really crowded space. They all sound alike, and to some extent they do have similar functionalities. Again, there's this core functionality that they all share. They wouldn't meet the definition, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that they can do. So, make sure you're doing a good job at the core stuff, and then find something that you're solving better than someone else, more or less at the edge, and then you have a better chance of actually building a successful business.
So as you just said, that this product has really grown with a lot of MarTechpreneurs. How many providers are you seeing out there today? I think you said there was something north of 80 companies.
Yeah, we do keep a sort of a large list, and we're aware of about 80 or so, and literally one or two a week. I just tripped over one today I had never heard of. So there, and part of it is, it's a popular it's a popular label.
Yes.
So there are companies that have been around for a long time that decide to call themselves CDPs, and they legitimately have a CDP capability. They meet that definition that I gave you. That may not be all that they do, and at some point you say, well, it's a product that has a CDP database inside, but the purpose of the product is not just to be a CDP. So there's a kind of a boundary issue that we run into a lot as to who we would call a CDP or not. But, that's more, frankly, an academic issue or an issue for us than it is for the marketers who simply want a system that solves their problem. So if you find a system that does other great things and also happens to have a CDP capability that meets your needs, that's great. Go for it.
Well, the CDP Institute is the website's great. It's a great knowledge center. But out of curiosity, why did you feel the need to form the Institute?
Well, the Institute was formed because a couple of vendors in the space came to me and said, well, you coined the term, you're an expert, and you're, again, have been a consultant for decades and have a reasonable reputation of being objective and reputable, so you're the right person to sort of take the category and promote the category. And I didn't want to promote any particular vendor, so I said I need to do this in a vendor-neutral way, and that's why we formed the Institute. So the Institute is basically a consortium of vendors. They all chip in the same amount, so we don't really, we don't have any particular favoritism among them. It's not that high an amount, but there's enough of them that it keeps the Institute paying its rent.
David, we've come to that special point in the show then that, are you ready for the 5 most important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Go for it.
Godfather reference, Godfather 1 or Godfather 2?
You assume I've actually seen The Godfather movie.
Please tell me you have.
I might have seen one. I live in a cave.
Okay.
And all I do is work. So.
Well, how about War Games or Godfather 1?
I like War Games.
I knew you would. It's a big mainframe.
That's right.
Here's another Godfather reference, but in the form of pizza. Godfather's pizza. Pepperoni or Supreme?
Again, one would have to have actually eaten a Godfather's pizza to know the answer to that question.
How about a normal, just any kind of pizza? It doesn't have to be that brown.
I'll go for the variety. I will assume the Supreme has more variety than pepperoni.
There you
I like
go.
variety, so let's go with Supreme.
Data personalization or omni-channel?
Which is a more ridiculous term? Which is at least
No, which is your preference?
which am I in favor of?
Yes.
Well, yes. The answer to that question
There
is
you go.
definitely yes.
This is a softball. CDP or DMP?
Well, personally, I have a bias. They actually are complementary, though. You need both.
And the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits. Oh, that one I can tell you.
There you go. Usually that's the hard one for people. So, David, where can people find out more about you, follow your thought leadership in the CDP space?
Okay, well, cdpinstitute.org is the website of the Institute. And if you send an email to, Draab, D-R-A-A-B, at cdpinstitute.org, you'll either get a response from me or a chatbot who does an excellent imitation of me. There's also a blog. There's also my personal blog outside of the Institute, which just look for David Raab blog and you'll find it. The URL is too long to
Outstanding.
spell out.
David, thank you so much for joining us on A Shark's Perspective today.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
So there was my conversation with David Raab, the founder and CEO of the Customer Data Platform Institute, and he's a subject matter expert at marketing technology and analytics. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, a great reminder, let's just take a look at the institution's definition. A CDP is a packaged software that builds a persistent, unified customer database that's accessible to other systems. Second, before you buy any brand of CDP, make certain to focus on your use cases. There are many different flavors, if you will, with different specializations, be it personalization or analytics or attribution. But as David said, focus on what you want your CDP to do, figure out what you're trying to accomplish, and then go out and find CDPs that have those features. Third, I love this comment. Customers expect that everyone should be as good as Amazon. In order to give that kind of experience, when considering building or buying any kind of tech for your stack, whether it's a CDP, DMP, CRM, data cloud, data warehouse, or some other, make certain to understand a strategy for unifying your data and for giving a unified experience that keeps the focus on your customer. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been my privilege to spend this time with you in order to discuss another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. Don Vito Corleone would be proud when I say, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.